The Devil May Cry games are all about the boys. There's a ton of them, all of them tough guys with quirky one-liners and big swords and a big strut. They're cool, they're strong, they're manly, but what exactly makes them so masculine? Where did these traditions come from? Who inspires the masculinity of these men? And what is this series trying to say about what it means to be a man or a demon? When you connect Devil May Cry to the greater literary trends of Japan in the last century, you find quite a few connections that show that the characters of DMC are part of a larger conversation about what it means to be a man in Japan. Virgil is an old-fashioned figure. He has his pride, he has his honor. He values power, and only works with those who also value power more than anything else. He's willing to sacrifice lives to work with monsters, to ignore conventional morality so long as his goals are met. His sword and his style in combat both draw upon more traditional Japanese warrior style. This concept art from DMC5 says goth kimono, which may imply this was the inspiration behind his jacket. He dresses well, speaks in a cultured fashion, and gives off the air that he is of a higher class of people. The Yamato, Virgil's blade, has a name which is a multifaceted reference to Japanese cultural history. The term Yamato in the modern sense is most commonly known as part of the phrase Yamato Damashi, the Japanese spirit. It's historically associated with the rise of nationalism, which led to World War II and one of the darkest periods of Japanese history. In the aftermath of the war, the occupation led to Japan being controlled by Americans, and the Japanese people feeling as if their own nation, their government, and their faith had betrayed them. Yamato is a term that calls on old ideas of Japanese life. The pride of the warrior, the isolationist mindset, the belief that might makes right, that power and glory is all that matters, that in failure it is better to die than to be shamed. When Virgil reunites with his blade at the beginning of DMC5, he does not immediately use the sword, though he says he's running out of time. He still makes the effort to return to his childhood home. He's performing a ceremonial thing, a kind of suicide, and there's no missing the visual motif that ties the scene to seppuku, the ritual suicide of the samurai. It would not have been done with a sword, but stabbing the gut in such a gruesome way, watching Virgil fall to his knees inside his own home, certainly pulls on those themes. But this does not bring his suffering to an end. It creates two half-beings, both of which are incomplete. Urizen is missing most of these memories, and seems to have none of the spirit and drive that V does. V, meanwhile, has the memories and personality, with none of the inner strength. He is slowly fading, and must rely upon his familiars to survive. Only together reunited is he able to return to his stronger form as Virgil, with a new understanding of his own strengths and weaknesses. Dante is his brother's opposite in nearly every way. Where Virgil is collected and controlled, Dante is chaotic and irreverent. Where Virgil seeks out power, Dante seems to seek out nothing. He has no real direction, no real interest in anything. He loves pizza and women, sensations and distractions, ignoring the real world and the nightmares within it. His sword is a giant western blade named Rebellion, the key to what Dante really is. His character is rebellious, but he's a rebel without a cause. He embodies a character type born from a specific era in Japanese history, one tied heavily to the post-war era and a generation of writers who grew up in the shadow of World War II, the first of which is the horror and sci-fi novelist Hideyuki Kikuchi. His first book, published in the early 1980s, was called Demon City Shinjuku, in which an apocalyptic earthquake powered by dark magic turned the entirety of the Shinjuku prefecture into a demon-filled wasteland, killing thousands and establishing a city of monsters and magic. This is the setting into which our hero Kyoya enters. Though he's not really interested in fighting the good fight, he's a troublemaker, a slacker, and a flirt. Though he inherited a powerful sword from his deceased father, who himself was a legendary warrior, Kyoya wants nothing to do with his father's battles. The dangers presented in the novel come from Kyoya's father's mortal enemy, but Kyoya is not all that upset about it. His remark to meeting the man is to comment that he is more attractive than his father. He's all sass, constantly making fun of every he meets before putting them down with great skill. But his rough exterior and jovial manner hide a more serious side. He does care about people, and he has a good heart, which is what eventually helps him stop the bad guy and save the girl. Kyoya matches Dante's background very well. They both have similar personalities, especially in Devil May Cry 3, where Dante comes off as a reverent delinquent, flirtatious, lacking direction or meaning, until he's shown what he could care about by the intervention of a good woman. The rebel without a cause is the outcome of a generation of people growing up in a world cast adrift after World War II. Suffering and poverty were widespread, and a sense of dread of apocalyptic nightmares on the horizon was very real. The sense of loss and the loss of identity was enormous, and the creation of a hero who cares about nothing, who rebels against authority, represents this sense of loss. He rejects the world because the world no longer seems to have any meaning, yet these heroes ultimately do try to help the world. Dante, a half-demon and a delinquent hero, tries not to care about the world that has abandoned him. He puts up a tough guy act, but while not immediately obvious in gameplay, he is genuinely afraid for his life. Dante's tough guy act is a cover for the pain he hides, which becomes clear when he's shown mourning and crying in the games. Dante is not demasculinized by his tears, it's a part of his masculinity. It shows how he's struggling to keep himself together, but the pain is so great that this has finally pushed him over. It says something about the events till this point, how much he's been through, and how painful this particular moment is, that it drives him to cry. It also says something about the greater arc of Dante's character in the timeline. Dante cries in games 1 and 3, and in the later titles, it is Nero who takes on that role. This is a subtle way of portraying the transformation Dante goes through. He's gone from the man who reached out to save his brother to the man who no longer tries to reach out. It will take Nero to do that for him. In DMC5, we see them reunited for the second time, after failing to reconcile in DMC3 due to their emotional hangups, and once again, they are on the same road to damnation. Virgil's two halves are reunited. He more clearly understands his own trauma and what he wants from the world, but he's not immediately capable of telling his brother that he's still wearing the same armor of the warrior, acting as if the only way he can communicate is with his sword. Dante too is wearing his armor. He acts as if this is just another day at work, as if it doesn't matter, pretending he doesn't care. It's all to protect Nero, the young man whose father Dante believes has to be killed, rather than forcing Nero to suffer the trauma he has. Nero never had to turn his personality into a shield to defend himself. He certainly suffered, but nothing like the twins have. He had a normal family, a pretty normal childhood, besides growing up in a cult. His troubles began as an older teen, and he had the support from friends and family along the way. At that age, both Virgil and Dante were alone. For that reason, Nero is far more emotionally healthy and stable, and the best representation of what a man is in this family. Just like his uncle and his father, he's more than capable of standing up to and fighting his family when he has to, but he can also lose with grace. He can be honest about his feelings, his wants and needs. In DMC5, once Nero learns the truth about Dante and Virgil, not only does he refuse to kill them, he refuses to let them kill each other. Dante and Virgil just aren't capable of taking that step themselves. They've seen too much, suffered too much all of these years. It takes Nero to wake them up, pointing out the obvious, that they're family. Maybe it's time to try and settle their differences more normally. What brought them here was a lot of mistakes, a series of consequences stemming from that singular tragedy in their childhoods, with both boys doing their best to survive an impossible situation. Now finally, they have escaped that time, they have survived, they don't have to keep wearing the armor. It takes Nero to show them that they can let their shields down for a while, and lo and behold, in the extra scenes during the end of the game, we see exactly what has happened. Virgil and Dante are still very much themselves, but they are softer, just a little gentler with each other. No one's being stabbed, a first for the boys, and they're teasing each other, fighting back to back and defending one another. This is the path they've been struggling to reach for so long, and they finally made it to the real masculine ideal, that of unity, a brotherhood of men who can fight but also feel in a world where even the devil may cry.